dealing with lynchings. This is live coverage on C-SPAN.
Ladies and gentlemen and members of the press, families and descendants of the victims themselves, we thank you for joining us today in this very historic time in the nation's capital here in the Senate. Tonight, the Senate will pass a belated but heartfelt and very sincere apology to the victims of lynching and their families. I'm particularly honored to help lead this effort with Senator George Allen, my colleague from Virginia, and now over 75 co-sponsors, including Senator John Kerry and others, senators from both parties, from every region of the nation. And we are pleased to put forth this resolution of apology before the Senate. It's important as we address these issues in the United States that we are honest with ourselves and that we tell the truth about what happened. This book that was recently published, Without Sanctuary, the author is here with us and will speak briefly to you, tells the story as pictures can sometimes only do. Although books have been written, thousands of words have been spoken, when pictures and photographs are presented, they are indisputable evidence of what has occurred. Part of what prompted me to step up with my colleagues and to put this resolution before the Senate was the publication of this book and the stories, the gruesome and horrific stories that it tells. It's not only that your eyes are drawn to the victims of the lynching, but you're also drawn to the faces of the spectators and realize that these were more than crimes. This was, in some measure, domestic terrorism, American against Americans, citizens against citizens. And it's a story that must be told. The Senate's role, as you know, we've stated all day, was the Senate is uniquely culpable in the sense that the House passed resolutions 3 times, strong resolutions against lynching. 7 presidents from both parties asked Congress, asked the Senate to act, and the Senate failed to do so. So we're going to put forward this resolution tonight. I'm pleased to help lead this effort. Joining me, I'd like to introduce now Senator George Allen, who will be followed by Senator John Kerry, and then we have others that we will introduce for their brief remarks. Senator Allen.
Good afternoon. It's a solemn afternoon. It's an historical afternoon. Mary, I've enjoyed working with you on this very momentous occasion. It's one in which we reflect upon the history of our country and the history of the United States Senate. The United States Senate has a very proud history. They have those small wooden desks that tell about the history of our country. But one thing that one learns from history is that sometimes by turning one's eye away or turning one's head away from scenes such as those and not responding to it, when one is accorded the responsibility of being a leader, is an abdication of duty, responsibility, and adherence to the advancement of freedom and justice for all the people of this country. I was very moved when Dick Gregory wrote me a letter asking me to be the Republican lead with Senator Landrieu on this resolution. At the end of it, he said, "We realize life will go on and your world will not be affected if you choose to do nothing." Well, that struck me. As I learned this, I said, no, I'm going to choose to stand up. I'm going to choose to do something. It is not easy for people to apologize, but I think it does show the character of the Senate today. And by reflecting on history, we hope to learn from history, to make sure that whenever the ugly evil head of racism, of anti-Semitism, of hatred, of intolerance ever arises now or in the future, the Senate will choose not to look the other way, but will stand to do what is right founding principles that were enunciated in the Declaration of Independence were not followed. And when one tries to understand the rationales, the reasons, and so forth of why the Senate filibustered for 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, when Senator Champ Clark from Missouri tried to get this measure through the Senate, in the cloakroom there were these photographs, many of which are in James Allen's book, Without Sanctuary. The Senate had turned their head. They turned their eyes away. And by doing so, as leaders in this country and not passing anti-lynching legislation at the federal level, they stated to those affronts to justice, these terrible whippings, torchings, and hangings, that somehow was to be condoned. We don't condone it these days, but it is something to understand that now tonight we're going to have these photographs. We're going to look at our history, this stain on the history of the United States Senate. And I think it does show the character of this nation, that we are still trying to achieve that most perfect union with equality and justice for all. And I thank you, Mary, but I mostly thank folks like Janet Cohen, James Allen, others who it is just amazing to me what an impact this resolution has on a lot of people who had never come forward, and how these lynchings, these torchings, these whippings intimidated people. And that was the point of it, to intimidate people so that they would not exercise their God-given rights and their rights accorded to them in our Constitution. So this will be a solemn, historic night in the United States Senate. It'll be on the same day that in 1967, we were going to have this in the LBJ room, but it got so big we moved it here. But this was the day in 1967 that President Lyndon Baines Johnson nominated Thurgood Marshall to be on the Supreme Court. So this is a historic day. It took the Senate a while to get him confirmed, not as long as some judges, but nevertheless, he was ultimately confirmed at the end of August. But this is a day for all of America to come together, to heal some of their wounds, never repaying the loss of so many loved ones whose lives were snuffed out, but in a most vile, heinous, vicious, and despicable way. We will stand strong for justice. We'll stand strong for liberty. And I thank all of those who are reliving the hurt and pain and agony that they've experienced their entire lives, as well as their family members. And I thank you all for your brave leadership in asking Mary and myself to take the lead for the Senate. And by the way, as Mary said, we have around 75 sponsors of this legislation, Republicans and Democrats, all saying to not just African Americans, but also Latinos, Asians, American Indians, Italians, mostly African Americans who have been subjected to these vile acts, taking away justice and liberty. And we say we're sorry and we'll do better in the future. Thank you.
It's a great privilege for me to join with my colleagues and with the other distinguished leaders who've worked so hard to bring this moment to fruition. And I want to I want to thank Mary Landrieu and George Allen for their leadership in the Senate. And I want to thank all of you who've worked so hard to help make this happen. This is a day of reckoning for all of us in the United States of America. It's a day of acknowledging the truth, understanding our history, admitting something that was profoundly, egregiously, dangerously wrong, and using it as a springboard to complete a journey that is yet unfinished. It's a statement in itself that there aren't 100 co-sponsors. It's a statement in itself that there's not an up or down vote. So our being here really does underscore the road yet to travel. And it's a very important thing to put in its proper historical context. I thought I was pretty well grounded in the history of our country, but I didn't know anything about lynchings except that they happened. I didn't know what they really were, what they really meant until a few years ago when the exhibition started to crisscross the country. And when I read about it, and when I saw the photographs, and when I heard the personal stories from people, I was moved literally to tears and beyond anything else that has touched me in recent memory. Lynchings were not just lynchings as we think of them. They weren't just hanging somebody. They were, in most cases, torture on American soil. They were the brutal, middle of the night, knock on a door and denial of rights to people in their homes. They were the willful dispersion of fear into a community. And the torture was torture which, when you read some of it, it's just stunning to believe that law enforcement at sometimes didn't just stand aside, it was complicitous. Many of these lynchings occurred with planning. They weren't spur of the moment, anger moments. They were planned, they were put together, they were sort of a conspiracy, if you will, to deny our fellow human beings and our fellow citizens, most importantly, their full measure of rights in this country. And it wasn't just African Americans, America. It was people of all walks of life in almost all parts of America. I think there were only 4 states, if I'm correct, where it didn't take place. I'm proud that Massachusetts was one of them, but that doesn't absolve all of us in this country from responsibility, and it particularly doesn't absolve the United States Senate. On 3 occasions, the House of Representatives was prepared to go forward, did go forward, passed it. The Senate stalled. President after president sought to do what we are doing today, and it didn't happen. Or not what we're doing today, but sought to put anti-lynching law in place. So now, finally, here we are, standing here. And it is important because the journey is unfinished. It's not enough just to acknowledge this today and walk out of here, because there's a different kind of lynching that occurs when children don't get the full measure of citizenship today in communities. There's a different kind of lynching that occurs when people are denied access to health care and denied the opportunity to be full citizens in the United States of America. That is the unfinished journey. And what we need to do is remember the words of Julian Bond when he dedicated that stirringly simple memorial in Montgomery to those who gave their lives for civil rights, who said that as much as it was erected to remember the dead, it was much more for the young people who cannot remember the period when these sacrifices began, with its small cruelties and monstrous injustices, its petty indignities and its death-dealing inequities. There are too many young to remember that from the seeming hopelessness there arose a mighty movement, simple in its tactics, overwhelming in its impact. That's why we have to remember the lynchings. For the young people who don't know what it means to wake in the middle of the night to hear a father or a son or a brother or a loved one literally dragged from their house to meet the cruelest death. The young people who have to help our country continue the journey of civil rights and the journey of making our country all that it can be. And we, none of us, can ever erase what Mr. Cameron, Mr. Wright, and too many others went through, but we can, through this memory, through this commitment of the Senate today, through our efforts to come together, we can honor the legacy of these civil rights heroes who've gone before us and the martyrs who went before us, by finally doing right by them and by our country.
At this time, before I call on Senator Pryor for brief remarks, who I thank you, Senator, for joining us, let me ask Janet Cohen to come give testimony and to bear witness to her own story that will shed light on why we're here today. Janet.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator Landrieu, and all the senators for your leadership. Senator Kerry was my senator, and Senator Allen was my governor. I've lived all over the place.
This is indeed a special journey for me. It's historic for all of us, and I thank the Crawford family for coming in such great numbers to represent all of our families. My family can't be here. I'm the last of my family that remembers the telling of the story of the lynching of my cousin Jimmy in Kentucky. It's a sentimental journey, too, because I am married to a former senator. He and I were married in this room. And to think that I would be here now to bear witness, not to justice, justice is out of reach, but to an apology. And I just wish I had the prerogative to accept the apology. But I can say thank you for offering it. And I do indeed wish all 100 is such a small number, and this is such a big issue. It would really be very American for all of them to vote for this proposal. I was guided by my friend, Dr. Ife Williams. She's here. I did not learn all about this from my family and the legend and lore of lynching of African Americans. I learned a great deal from you, from Mark Planning, and from Dick Gregory, who just fired up the belly of what it's like to be an African American and be denied your rights. So this is a first step. It's up to all of us to go out and take that second step. It's about education. It's about enlightenment. And I'm so glad to see the diversity in this room, that we're not all black, because generally we're just always singing to the choir. Today, everybody sings our song, because it is all our song. Thank you very much.
Senator Pryor.
Praise God that we've made so much progress in this country. We're not there yet. Amen? Amen. But we've made a lot of progress in this country. And the way I see this resolution is we're acknowledging some ugliness in our past. Hopefully it'll bring some healing, heal some of those wounds. In a lot of ways, it doesn't make anything any better, because the Senate had a chance to act and it had a chance to make America better. We failed to do so. And I join my colleagues in offering a sincere apology and expressing sincere regret that we missed that opportunity for decades to try to make this country stronger and better. But praise God that we're making a lot of progress. I want to thank y'all for being here. One of America's poets, Bob Dylan, wrote a song one time called Blowing in the Wind, and one of his lines in there is, how many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? How many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? And how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? And today, the United States Senate is no longer pretending. We're not turning our head. We're acknowledging that we missed the opportunity. We're apologizing. We're expressing regret. And hopefully, we're pointing toward a brighter future for America. Because we have a very bright future in this country. This country is stronger because of racial reconciliation. It's stronger because of the civil rights movement. I want to thank everybody, all of my colleagues, and want to thank everybody that's here participating in this, and I'm very proud to be part of this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We would like your patience to hear from at least 3 or 4 more family members that are here. Dora D. Johnson has been giving interviews all day since early this morning. She's holding up beautifully. But she has a story to tell on behalf of, I think, over 100 members of her family are here. Dora.
I think I'll remain brief, and I'll just use the words of Grandpa Crawford. And it will be the highest endeavor of our lives to strive to make as good citizens in the future as we have in the past. For those who opposed and differed with us, I have nothing but a friendly feeling. But it is meet and right to settle our differences legally and amicably. Grandpa Crawford took that ad out in the paper one day. Those were his words. He also said, give my bank book to my children. And then he said, I thought I was a good citizen. Well, the Crawfords are here today to let Grandpa Crawford know, we got your bank book, and we're going to take care of your business. It's not over with. And we know you were a good citizen. And so that's why we proudly wear the Crawford name today. We will not stop remembering you, and we won't stop until we find the last one of the Crawfords. Thank you very much.
If my staff will help me now, I'm looking for James Cameron. I don't know if he's with us. Okay, we'll wait. Okay. Simeon Wright is here today. Simeon, would you please stand? Besides this being a day in a room where Janet Cohen was married and Thurgood Marshall's nomination was sent up, it's also a day that in Mississippi, the trial of Emmett Till is being opened. We have Simeon Wright, who was with Emmett the day he was taken. Simeon.
Thank you, Senator. Delighted to be here, Landrieu. Senator Allen.
Good to see you.
Senator Gary. Pleasure. I'm here. My name is Simeon Wright. I'm the son of Mose Wright. You all know about 50 years ago, Emmett Till was marched out of my home. He was murdered for the simple reason of whistling at a white woman. I listened to the man of God today when we had our luncheon. He said that for evil to triumph, all has to happen is good men to do nothing. In 1955, the good men did nothing. Someone would say, but if only one voice, I can't do anything. I saw Mr. Cameron today. One voice saved his life.
That's true.
Just one. This resolution that we are witnessing today, I wondered, I said, if we had a federal law in 1955, there is no way those men would have come into my house and take Emmett out and kill him. I told someone, I said, we have a federal law against bank robbery, but not against hanging. How sad for America. I think we can do better. And these brave senators here have shown us that we are going to do better. Thank you.
One of the great leaders against lynching in our country was a woman, and her name was Ida B. Wells Barnett. She was an extraordinary woman, a journalist in the 1800s from Memphis, and she began to write stories about what she saw happening. The first story she wrote was about 3 men she actually knew. She knew the reports about their criminal behavior were not correct because she knew them. In fact, I think one of the young men that was killed was her godson, or in some way connected to her personally. And we are very proud today and quite honored to have her great-grandson with us. Dennis Duster wants to talk about his great-great-grandmother, Ida B. Wells.
Thank you. Thank you for having me out today. It is an honor to speak before you today and to be here at a historic moment. Again, Ida B. Wells was my great-grandmother. My name is Dan Duster. That is my father's grandmother. And as Senator Landrieu indicated, her crusade for lynching essentially began when she knew 3 men that were lynched in Memphis, Tennessee. Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, and Will Stewart, to put names to those 3 men. Thomas Moss, she was so close to that she was actually godmother to his son. So when reports of lynching came out, oftentimes there were allegations of crime or rape against women, things of that nature. And in the media today, when you hear that, you think, oh, they may not have been guilty of that crime, but they were guilty of some crime. In this instance, these men were guilty of nothing outside of being successful black business owners. And so when she did that investigation, she found out that there were law officials there and judicial officials there. So that spurned her passion for justice. She did other investigations against lynchings in the South and published a publication called The Red Record in 1895. And that's what provided a lot of documentation for lynching and helped start that struggle. And Ida B. Wells actually met with President McKinley in 1898 to suggest anti-lynching legislation. So again, it's with pride that I stand here today to say thank you to the Senate, the 75 that voted for the anti-lynching legislation 107 years later, and express disappointment to those 25 that still haven't had the courage or dignity to do so. I completely don't understand that. I thank you for having me here today, and God bless America. Thank you.
Mr. Cameron is joining us at this moment. Mr. Cameron, James Cameron, as he comes forward, is we think, the oldest living survivor of a lynching. The noose was actually put around Mr. Cameron's neck when he was a young man, and by his own account, which he will share with us, by God's grace and a brave man's voice cried out, "He's innocent," and the noose was removed. Mr. Cameron has been telling his story for 80-plus years, and we're going to get him up here. I'm hoping that this is going to work. Mr. Cameron, if you can just speak as well as you can, and his family is with him. Is it okay?
Just like that.
Can you stand at all, or you should sit?
Test it. Testing. Podium.
Is that right?
Chill. Podium.
Okay. Can you try to do this?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We'll try, Mr. Cameron.
I'm glad to be here and glad to see so many of you people here greet me. It's been a long journey. I got lost coming in here.
Photographers, get down.
We got to put me into the building where we were.
No, there's no PA.
Which, excuse Mr. Cameron, hold on here. Which one of these actually works?
And we're looking for one that's connected with a PA system. There is no PA.
We're sorry. We'll just have to do the best we can. I'll try to, or maybe his. We have this recorded, this one. So go ahead, Mr. Cameron.
Well, I'm one who escaped the lynching. A lynching is when two or more people decide to take the law into their own hands and issue justice according to their own racist views. I was lynched, but I wasn't lynched like my two buddies, you see. So I was lynched, but they tried to kill me on the way up to the tree where my two buddies were hanging. And I was saved by a miracle. When I mean saved by a miracle, they had the rope around my neck and they were going to lynch me right between my two buddies. And I prayed to God. I said, Lord, have mercy and forgive him my sin. And then everything got deadly quiet. That 10 to 20,000 people there have been hollering for my blood, and we went Cameron, and we got in. They had to turn me loose because the boy said, take this boy back. He had nothing to do with any killing or raping of any white woman. And then they took the rope off my neck. Those hands that had been so rough and ready to kill, they had already killed. They took the rope off my neck and they allowed me to stumble and stagger back to the jail, which was just a half a block away. When I got back to the jail, the sheriff said, I'm going to get you out of here for safekeeping. Well, hell, they was too late for that. He knew since early that morning because white and black people both had been calling him and telling him to get us out of there for safekeeping. But he said, no, my jail is okay. But coming to find out, he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan himself. And Indiana at that time had over 500,000 Klansmen. enrolled in this membership. This was in 1930, August the 7th. So he did get me out there for safekeeping. I was in jail 1 year awaiting trial. And the jury found me guilty of being an accessory before the fact, not to the fact, before the fact, to voluntary manslaughter. And they sentenced me to 2 to 21 years in prison. After 2 years in prison and 1 year awaiting trial, I went up to the parole and they sent me back 5 times to a total of 4 to 21 instead of 2 to 21. The first time I went up for parole, they sent me back 30 days. Then I did that, they sent me back 60 days. I did that, they sent me back 90 days. I did that, they sent me back 6 months. I did that, and then they sent me back a whole year. I thought they were going to keep me the whole 21 years because that meant that they couldn't keep me no less than 2 years, no more than 21. So when I got out of prison, I went to Detroit, Michigan, and married a young girl. We've been married 67 years. We raised 4 boys and 1 girl to decent maturity. And I've never been in trouble since. So that is essentially an abbreviation of my trouble. They had me charged with first-degree murder, auto battery, highway robbery, bad associates. Yeah, you can get in trouble with fooling around with bad associates. You know that? You don't have to do with it. You just associate with them. And the police could ask you some questions that's going to be hard for you to answer. So I'm glad to be here. I got lost coming in here. We got in the wrong building. So many buildings here, we don't know whether we're coming or going. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. We have been so honored to have him with us today to tell his story, and without bitterness and with a great deal of love and pride in his heart. And he really is truly a model for all of us.
Okay.
We do have Congressman Jefferson, who's joined with us today, and I'll ask him for remarks in just a moment. But we have the author of Without Sanctuary, and I'd like to ask him to come up and say a word. Then we'll close out with Congressman Jefferson's remarks. James Allen.
Easier just to move this thing over. We'll wrap you in the flag.
Thank you. I want to thank Senator Landrieu and Allen.
Speak up.
Okay, I want to thank Senator Landrieu and Allen. I've started to think about race in America, not in terms of skin color or people, but in terms of the horse that people ride in on. If you're riding in on the same horse that oppressed people and kept people down, then who cares who's on top? There's no shortcut to reconciliation, and there won't be. But this apology took more than courage. It took a lot of work, and a lot of arm twisting, and a lot of love on the part of Senator Landrieu to make this come to pass. I'll never forget what Mrs. Mamie Till Mobley said to me. She said, "I never wasted a day hating." But she never stopped looking for justice either for her son. and for the country. I think it's a great model for all of us, and I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congressman Jefferson represents the city of New Orleans and is here on behalf of himself to give expressions on this event.
Hi. How are you, sir?
Fine, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very proud of my U.S. Senator Mary Landrieu and the work she's done to bring this day to pass. I represent New Orleans now, but I came from a part of the state that has a very dark history with respect to lynching. In fact, in my part of the country where I grew up, Mary, it has the most cases of lynching any place in Louisiana, the northeastern part of our state. And I've heard the stories over the years and talked to people who have lived through the horror of the lynching period. Next to the enslavement of African Americans in this country, there's no darker period in the history of America than the period when lynching was allowed and when our Congress wouldn't do anything about it. And today, through this action that the Senate is taking, it is making an expression that the people who suffered through this period of time and who still suffer through it today are worth something and deserve the recognition of this Senate and of this country, and deserve to have them say, you count for as much as anybody else counts, and your history is as important as anyone else's, and we are extraordinarily sorry for what happened in this country. And I think that is the least that can be done, and I'm glad that it is being done today in this setting. It has been an honor beyond few that I have had to be here at this time to hear this gentleman make these expressions. And it was something I'll carry with me for the rest of my days, just to have been here to be a part of this with him. And so to all of you, and to particularly to Mary Landrieu and to Senator Allen and the rest who've had the leading hand in this, congratulations, and we thank you for it. And it is extraordinarily important. People ask, is this important to be done? Why isn't something more happening along these lines? Everything that we do to acknowledge the worth of African Americans in this country and to correct what has gone wrong in our country is important. No matter how small it is, no matter how big it is, everyone is just as important as the other. And so this is an important action today because it addresses a significant wrong that was done. And whenever one is standing up for right and trying to correct historic tragedies in our country, it's the right thing to do, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And I'm glad the Senate has taken this action today, I think, on behalf of myself and the people I'm privileged to represent, and many with whom I serve with today who cannot be here for whatever reason. We all share in this wonderful moment of history for our country. Thank you very much.
We'll be able to answer some questions right now just for a few moments, but the committee members, Mark Planning and Jim Allen and others, will stay for a little while for interviews as well. Go ahead.
Explain to us why there is no roll call vote and why this debate is taking place not during regular business hours but in the evening, and are you disappointed by those two things?
Well, first of all, we requested there to be a time for debate on the floor, and this is the time that we were provided, and we're pleased to have the 3 hours of debate. As I said, there have been thousands of victims, and we, were happy with the time that we were given. The Senate has a lot of important business. This is very significant business that's before the Senate. So tonight there'll be a resolution that's passed. We are gaining every minute of this action more and more support. And so tonight we'll have a full debate and expressions on the floor for this.
But why no roll call vote? And are you disappointed that there isn't a roll call?
Well, we were asked to proceed in this way, and so we are proceeding in this way. And we hope to have, as this resolution behind us, well, it's not here, we're asking the senators, it should be here, the senators to sign. And we're very pleased with the senators that have signed. We hope by the end of the night we'll get 100 signatures. Next question.
Of the 25 who have not signed on, explain their
reasons? No, and you know, this resolution is going to be in our cloakroom. Senator Allen has kept it in his cloakroom for the better part of the week. I've had it in our cloakroom. Some senators have been traveling and haven't had an opportunity, so we hope we'll keep it in the cloakroom for the end of the week. And then we've asked this document to basically travel with the exhibit of the photographs that are right now in Chicago. We're hoping that Senator Durbin, Senator Barack Obama can take this with them when they go to the exhibit that it opened in Chicago just last week. Any other questions? Go ahead in the back.
Senator Allen, this is an important move, but a symbolic one. The symbol of the noose continues to terrorize people, sometimes in their workplaces or near their homes. What should be done, perhaps, to strengthen hate crimes about showing nooses and intimidating people with them?
Well, these attacks, just so you understand, some were hanging, some were mutilations, torching to death. Others, I don't even want to describe out of my mouth some of the vile acts with ice picks and acetylene torches and whipping to death and burning people at the stake. As far as hate crimes legislation is concerned, when I was governor, we passed a hate crimes law adding to the hate crimes basic law, which applied to those previously, it applied to those who committed a crime against someone on account of their religion. And when I was governor, we added on account of their race. There is federal hate crimes legislation, I believe, that already includes that, and I voted for hate crimes legislation. And here's how this all kind of fits in together. The Senate, there's going to be 75 sponsors on this, and in the event that the Senate did not filibuster for 6 weeks on Senator Champ Clark's legislation, would that have saved all 4,700 plus lives? Probably not, because many had been killed, torched, whipped, lynched before then. But it would have sent a message. It would have sent a message that the United States Senate condemns this activity, because what you had at the state level was obviously not enforcement. We heard testimony, I think Mr. Wright was talking about it, how it wasn't just a mob. The local officials were complicit in it, and about 1% were actually prosecuted. If you had the federal government with this statute, it could have brought the force of law enforcement, besides the message it would send. So the point of the matter is we can pass hate crimes legislation. I have voted for it, signed it into law as governor, and I think the states actually are enforcing such laws. And in the event that they don't and they need added law enforcement assistance, I have voted for such hate crimes legislation, which just came out. It was an amendment, I think, last year, or whenever it was, that it came up and voted for it, so that in the event that the states need assistance to add an added penalty for whatever the underlying crime is, that the federal government can assist state and local law enforcement.
I just want to add something on that, because this has been a question that's come up, and I'm a supporter of the hate crimes legislation that has not passed but almost passed the Congress on several occasions. This was a crime, but it was more than a crime. What these photographs in this book show, which prompted me to step forward and many of our colleagues, as I said, is not just the victims and their pictures. It is the pictures of the onlookers, the children that were let out of Sunday school to witness these lynchings. Shops were closed so employees could attend the lynchings. The railroads had special excursions and discount tickets for people to go. This was a community spectacle, and the Senate knew it. And the Senate of the United States knew it. It was a community spectacle. It was an act of terrorism. This was not a crime committed by criminals against criminals or people who could have, been guilty. This was really an act of terrorism, domestic terrorism. And I think it's quite appropriate today that we're discussing this as our country leads the fight against terrorism abroad. We try to remind Americans what it really is and how you have to fight it. We can begin by understanding it existed right here in this nation. And so it is not just a crime. It was a community event. And the pictures in this gentleman's book will show you that, which is what is very compelling about this action we're taking today.
Senator, you said a minute ago about the vote, that you were asked to do it this way without an up or down vote. Is that a suggestion that there were members who were perhaps inclined to vote against this but didn't want to be embarrassed by having to do so in public?
Well, let me tell you something. The Senate is trying to get its business done. We're having some difficulty getting business done. And so those of us sponsoring this resolution thought this was business that needed to get done. And we're doing it the best way we know how to do it. And so we've put this resolution before the Senate. We're having a 3-hour debate. Senators have been volunteered to speak. I'm pleased that all the speaking slots have been asked for, and we have had this resolution signed. If senators want to affix their name to this document, they may. If they choose not to, that will be recorded. Anything else? All right, thank you. Mr. Cameron needs some water. Thank you.
You need some water? Does anybody have a bottle of water? I like